Talk Television with Denise Richardson.
Welcome to News Talk Television. I'm Denise Richardson. Do you think the government should be allowed to decide how much your pain and suffering is worth? Some Republican members of Congress say they want to pass a bill that would put a ceiling on how much you can sue for and how much you can receive in a lawsuit. They'd like to put a $250,000 limit on punitive damages against physicians and pharmaceutical companies. So if a doctor gives your child the wrong medicine and the result is deadly, you could sue for only $250,000. Well, joining us now on video call from Washington, D.C. is Attorney Jay Lefkowitz, who's a former Cabinet Affairs Director for the Reagan-Bush administration. And with me here in New York is Bert Blitz, who's a medical malpractice attorney and a member of the New York State Trial Lawyers Association. Jay, let me start with you. Why caps on lawsuits?
First of all, I think we have to look at the context of where we are in the punitive damages and in the pain and suffering industry that the trial lawyers have really cooked up. We've got a situation right now where lawsuits are absolutely exploding. Somebody recently got a $4 million award because his car wasn't painted as nicely as he wanted. A woman got burned at McDonald's from a little hot coffee. $3 million.
Let me interrupt you there. Let me interrupt you. 700 people complained to McDonald's. She was burned 16% of her body, and there were third-degree burns.
First of all, we're not diminishing what happened to her, although I would wonder how many people of those 700 people who wrote in would have gladly taken $3 million in return for being burned. But that's not the issue. The issue is, first of all, how is she in any way made whole? She had a burn. She needs to get treated. She clearly had some injuries. And if McDonald's is negligent, and I'm not sure if McDonald's was negligent, then obviously they should pay her out-of-pocket, her compensatory, her medical expenses.
Well, let me ask
but
you,
I'm not sure why she needs $3 million in pain and suffering.
well, then how do you disperse that? Let me ask you, how much is pain and suffering worth?
Well, let me first correct a few things that Jay said. First of all, Denise, the woman didn't recover $3 million. We have a built-in system where there is an automatic reduction if a judge believes that a verdict is excessive. The public hardly ever hears about that. But that lady only recovered in the range of $600,000 for very severe third-degree burns of her groin and reproductive area, and the injury was easily warranted for that kind of recovery. But we're talking about caps. Caps are essentially and basically foreign to our philosophy in this country because it takes away individualism. It takes away the circumstances that exist in each case, which is different, not the same. For example, it discriminates against children who do not earn any money, and a child who's a quadriplegic does not get any economic loss necessarily. A housewife doesn't get any economic loss necessarily because she doesn't work. So with the cap, there will be only $250,000, even assuming that housewife or that child or the elderly or the poor, all of whom suffer as a result of this cap, will only receive $250,000, even if they are quadriplegic, blinded, lost their limbs, or suffer horrendous, profound injury. That's wrong.
Based on what Bert is saying, I see you want to get in on this.
Yeah, Denise, I mean, first of all, I recognize that Bert points out that this woman and basically every other claimant doesn't get anywhere near the amount of recovery that a jury awards. Of course, what Bert didn't point out is that the main reason they don't get anywhere near what the jury awards is that the trial lawyers take about half of it right up front. But the real issue when we look at pain and suffering is you have to look at why the system is so corrupt, why the system is so broken. The median number of visits to a doctor for every head and neck injury in an accident is somewhere between 2 and 3 visits to a physician nationally. In Los Angeles in 1991, the median number of visits for every lawsuit filed based on a head or a neck claim in a car accident was 26 visits.
Per
so
person?
in other words,
Wait,
you've
20?
got about
26?
7 or 8 times, yes, 26 visits to a physician in any case where a claimant said, I had a head injury, I had a neck injury.
Well, Bert, There's a lot of fraud in this business of and not just malpractice, but in lawsuits. There's a lot of fraud that goes on.
Let me explain what's going on, Denise. In a malpractice case, there cannot be fraud. And let me explain why.
Can't be fraud.
The case depends upon the doctor's or the hospital's records. 95% of malpractice cases depend upon what the doctors and the hospitals write into their records. If there's fraud, and on occasion, and in 35 years of trying these cases, I have seen that the fraud emanates from the doctor altering or changing, or the hospital altering or changing the record. The patient doesn't have anything to do with the record. The patient hardly even knows what's wrong with him or her. They're not doctors. There's no fraud emanating from this system as Jay would have the public
are you blaming all of the doctors for the outrageous amounts of money we're talking about here?
No, there aren't outrageous amounts of money. This is a concoction by the Reagan-Bush administration. There are no 70.1% of all the verdicts in this country in malpractice for the past 10 years has resulted in a verdict for the doctor or the hospital.
Let's take this phone call. Wait a second, Jay. We've got Ramito on the phone from Texas. Ramito, thanks for your call. What's your comment tonight?
My comment is, I lost a loved one.
I'm sorry, Ramito.
And there's no amount of money that'll bring her back. But you got to make these people pay.
What happened to your child?
I lost my mom. And due to the negligence of the hospitals and doctors.
Did you sue?
The whole family, we're 12. And it's...
This is really hard for you.
Yeah, it is.
What happened in your mom's case?
She was given a 98% chance to recover. And due to the negligence, something went wrong on a heart bypass, and she passed away.
I'm so sorry. But what made you call? Because you're angry about this.
I'm angry, because these people think we're greedy, and they're trying to put a limitation, We're trying to make these guys pay, because it broke our whole family up, and not, uncles, aunts, and everything.
Ramito, stay there for a minute, because I know you're feeling really awful. But you hear a Ramito. He's lost his mother. There's pain and suffering that goes along with that. And if you put caps on lawsuits based on... Take the fellow this week, and he goes in for an operation on his, I think, left leg. The doctor operates on the right leg and removes that leg, removes the wrong leg. Now, let's say there were caps on lawsuits. He might only be entitled to what, $250,000 or 3 times with the punitive damages, 3 times the amount of the lawsuit? Is that it?
Denise, there is no question that there are terrible things that happen to good people. That's one of the random factors of living in the United States. It's actually a lot safer in the United States, but let me tell you something. When it comes to certain types of cases, you lose a finger, you have an old person who dies, and maybe you can't calculate what the lost earnings would be, so you can't figure out what the damages should be. I think there's a better solution to this than anything that the plaintiff's lawyers have offered. I think maybe states should set mandatory minimum amounts of compensation, the way you have with insurance. If, God forbid, you lose a leg, if, God forbid, you lose an arm, if you're over 80 years old and you're injured or you're killed, there should be some kind of mandatory minimum. But to let a jury go out and simply decide this is worth $1 million or $2 million or $50 million, let me tell you a little bit of the fraud that goes on. You've got expert witnesses in these cases who testify, and some of these expert witnesses are themselves
But wait
being
a
paid on
second,
contingency.
you're saying then the jury shouldn't decide, government should decide. Let's discuss that when we return. We're going to take a break now, and we want to offer Ramito our condolences, but thank you very much for calling in. Stay with us. You can call us at 1-800-792-7469.
There's a study that was done
You're gonna, yeah. Okay. I can hear Darla. No, not like before.